Are we talking about games yet?
Dun, 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 dun.
I don't know how to start. This is so weird.
I don't know either. I guess.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I mean, it's okay if we laugh. It's not bad.
Yeah.
All right. What's going on, everyone? I am Geoffrey with the Indie Gaming Guild, joined by...
Cody with Indie Game Pulse.
Hi, Cody. How's it going today?
Good. How you doing, Geoffrey?
Doing good. I'm excited to be hanging out with you. We got a special new project that you and I are working on. Do you want to tell everyone what this is all about?
Yeah, so we figured we would just get together once a month, kind of in a vodcast kind of way, just to catch up about our favorite indie games that came out last month, some that are coming out this month, and then just kind of address some recent news updates as well.
Yeah, I like it. You know, Cody and I talk about games a lot, both about our channels and just in general with our community. So we thought, why not take all of our communities on board and have a part of that conversation with each other, but with you guys?
Exactly.
Right? We love indie games, so why not talk about it with everyone once a month and get everyone caught up and talk like friends do?
Yeah. Okay. I mean...
That was such a, yeah! Okay.
Sorry.
Wow, you didn't have anything to go with that. Yeah, that's what we're doing! All right, sorry, everyone. This is part of our first time doing this because it's a work in progress. Thank you for being a part of our communities.
Yes, thank you. And if you haven't checked out Geoffrey's channel, you can find him at the Indie Gaming Guild. You can also find him on Twitter at Indie Game Guild.
And then you can find Cody. Oh, I'm sorry. No, please.
Go for it. Please introduce me.
I wanted the honors to do that because it felt really professional.
Yes.
Also, you can find Cody. Wait, which way do the fingers go? Whatever. You can find Cody at Indie Game Pulse and look below right there at Indie Game Pulse on Twitter and join our communities. Learn about indie games. Come chat with us if you want. No pressure.
Please.
So, Cody, my friend, how did we get to know each other in this crazy YouTube journey? How did this start? How did we meet? So this is turning into a weird love story now, sorry.
Yeah. Well, we sat across the diner.
I had a milkshake, you had a burger.
You were wearing that nice red checkered dress.
As we do. And you had a beautiful flower in your hair.
Yes.
Okay.
No, we originally met through YouTube. I was looking for people to partner with for an upcoming collaboration with just kind of a countdown list collaboration, and I reached out to Geoffrey, and he said, "No way, dude, your channel sucks. I don't even know you." So...
Yep.
No,
and here we are.
And here we are, 6 months later. No, but he was really nice and responded, and we went back and really in-depth emails, just getting to know each other, sharing our love for indie games.
It was a really neat time that Cody reached out because both of us have been doing our respective channels, trying to get everyone excited about indie games, since later in 2020. I started my channel in August 2020, and you started yours when, Cody?
Late September, so just like a month or two behind you.
So it was a really neat time for both of us that we didn't know each other until December 2020, but we were both making fun, hopefully enjoyable content about indie games. And I got this email from Cody, and after I told him I hated his channel and he was awful, I thought, you know what, that wasn't nice. We should probably be friends. So we had talked and we had messaged and just realized that we both have this really fun passion for indie games. We're both trying to figure out this whole craziness that is YouTube, right? So why not just continue to talk, continue to just long story short, we just continued to talk, became friends, and now we talk regularly and wanted to work together in some way to help bring light to indie games. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those cool times where we both just were in the same boat, and there's ups and downs with YouTube, right? So getting to share that with someone in a similar community, in a similar space, for me personally, has been really wonderful working with you, just learning from you as well. It's been really cool. So doing something like this was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I don't know what you think.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, we go back and forth just talking about not only video content and indie games, but algorithms and titles and thumbnails and all that. And it's just really nice to have someone else in the community, someone else who's also ahead of me and is kind of pioneering the way, not trailblazing a new path, but, someone who's in the trenches with me and someone just to share that camaraderie with. So it's very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is such a crazy time, and our communities know that we try to work hard to put out great content. And for all of you that are watching, Cody and I really, really deeply care about the people that watch our stuff. Whether you like a video or put in a comment or come to a live stream, it really does mean a lot to us. Because without the communities, as cheesy as it sounds, like it's true that we wouldn't have anywhere to go with it. So obviously, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel actually like I'm friends with a lot of the people in my community, people who come to streams and just chat with me. We're not always talking about the game I'm playing. We're talking about the games that you guys are playing, what you guys are making for dinner. Nick always tells me crazy pineapple recipes, and I've made a couple of them, and they're super good. So it's opportunities like that to meet other people that also love indie games, not just creators, not just other people like Geoffrey, but people like you guys who love playing indie games and love talking about indie games. And it's a really neat kind of, it feels like a small community, but also a large worldwide community as well. And I know, Geoffrey, you and I both have several people in other countries, which I think is really cool.
It is, because it kind of brings home how small the world is. When you're talking to someone halfway across the world about a game or just about life, it kind of brings home the point that, again, as cheesy as it sounds, as cliche, we're all in this together just trying to go through this life. And when we have little moments to stream and just play a game and talk with people, hopefully it can just provide a nice little bastion of positivity and hope, for people. It's just games, but at the end of the day, we all have our ways to find happiness. And I think that's why Cody and I, we became friends from this, because we shared similar values in that.
Well, do you want to kind of just give a brief overlook of what's coming up in our vodcast, in our video?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason Cody and I started this is because, again, we talk about stuff every month. We wanted to share that with all of you. We care about you guys. We wanted you to be a part of this. So we thought it'd be fun to not only catch up with each other about news, the different news things that come up with indie games each and every day seemingly, but also to chat about upcoming conferences or upcoming, things like State of Plays or Indie Directs, things like that, where the indie games are showcased a lot. But also just discuss the games that we're excited about from the upcoming month and also the previous month, to just get you guys in the know, essentially, of all the indie games. And then we have a special section at the end, which maybe we'll just save to say that at the end, so stick around. Let's go into our next section. So how about that?
Sure. So as far as recent announcements, I know a big kind of, not a conference, but a digital showcase, I guess, a couple weeks ago was the Sony State of Play, where they showed off a ton of new games for Sony, obviously, but two indie games that really stuck out to me were Sifu or Shifu. I've heard it both ways, but it's Sifu. It's a third-person brawler with a kung fu aesthetic, or a kung fu focus. It looks really sleek. The combat looks really nice. The graphics actually look pretty insane for an indie title, I thought. So I'm excited about that one. And then the other one was Kina Bridge of Spirits, which just looks insane. It's exactly what I love in indie games, things that are outdoorsy and just really kind of naturally magical. Yeah. Like Ori. The Ori series, I would put in that category of nature and magic in the same realm. But yeah, Kina Bridge of Spirits, it's an action-adventure game about a girl named Kina who gathers these adorable spirit companions, ironically called the Rot. And then as she gathers them... I forgot
about that.
Yeah, and they're actually really stinking cute. They are. So as she gathers them, she gains more powers throughout the game. It's just a really beautiful game. If you haven't seen it, look it up after this video, of course. But a really great trailer came out, and it's coming out in August, I think, of this year, August 24th.
I know, that game, I think you hit all the points right. I completely forgot that they're called the Rot. Because when you look at them, they're just like these adorable little, I don't even know what you would try to describe them, like little black, almost fuzzy looking balls of magic. I don't even know, but you're right, they're really crazy looking.
I thought maybe a combination of minions from Despicable Me and Porgs from Star Wars. Is that what they were called?
Oh, yes. I only recently learned about what the Porgs were from someone in a stream. Danny Dank, shout out to you. You're the one who told me about it.
But then they're like pitch black too. So maybe a combination of those three things.
Kina looks like, and people have probably heard this before, but it looks like you'd be playing a Pixar movie.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how the devs are managed to make a game that looks this lifelike in a cartoony way, where you just feel like, even from watching the trailer, because I remember seeing the first time the trailer came out, I thought this was for a movie, because the graphics were like that far and above what you would normally see. Not that graphics have to be everything, but it just looks so whimsical. And I think for indie games, it's going to really shine a light on the artistic value, that magic feeling that you get from those types of games. Similar to Ori, as you had said, those games are really emotional, but they bring that same sort of magic and the artistry of games to life. But what else is freaking coming out?
Red Solstice 2, I think, just announced their release date.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know if you're following that, though.
What is it? I haven't heard of that now.
It's like an XCOM type turn-based tactical strategy game.
Okay. I haven't heard of that now. That's why I like your channel.
I mean, I had it in my top 10 games of 2021, so...
I don't watch your videos.
Okay.
So yeah, Sifu, Kina, Bridge of Spirits, just a couple of games for you guys to think about later in 2021. Obviously, dates can change at any point, so...
And some other newsy updates. Geoffrey, why don't you give us what's going on with Epic and Mediatonic?
Ooh, this was a big story that I think we were excited to talk about. So, for those that don't know, I'm sure you do, Epic Games, obviously not under the realm of indie, considering, the success of Fortnite, to just name one thing from them. But I'm sure most of you know Fall Guys, the wonderful hit game that came out of nowhere with the jelly bean, crazy characters that run around and essentially compete in battle royales. But Mediatonic, who is the developers that created Fall Guys, have actually just been acquired by Epic Games, which, when you think about that in terms of the scope of indies, a giant company like that to buy up something like Fall Guys, while it is a big purchase and it may take away maybe a little bit of that charm of the indie side, also means they're going to be able to put out a ton of content to make Fall Guys last for years and years.
There's going to be so much support there.
But what do you think about, I think thinking about this topic where a giant company like Epic buys up a smaller one like Mediatonic, what do you think about that in terms of the indie space? Do you think it's good? Is it bad?
Do you mean does it take away the indie title from the game, or just in general?
Well, I think because we talked about earlier in the video that we like indies because they're smaller, it's more a few people that work on it. There's the diversity. Excuse me. Sometimes those bigger publishing arms can take away some of that charm and passion. So I just wonder, do you think them being bought by a giant company like Epic could ruin that indie feel of Fall Guys, just like the indie feel of Among Us? There's that indie feel, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I just wonder.
I think it could. I think it just depends on how hands-on Epic, wants to or needs to be. I think the team at Mediatonic has been very good about reaching out to the community. If you follow their Twitter page, it's hilarious. They post multiple times a day. So I think they have a good grasp on what the community wants and what the community needs. I can't say that for, across the board for every developer that gets kind of bought up by Epic Games or by anybody else. But I think it will work well for Mediatonic.
I think you're right. They are one of those teams even before they got bought, that they're always engaging with smaller content creators, smaller people on YouTube, smaller streamers. You can tell that they just care about the people that play their games, which I think that's the important thing, just to see that level of care even as a game grows. So let's hope for the best, but it's still something to think about. So Cody, something you were telling me about in an earlier conversation was the Future Games Show that Games Radar, the Games Radar channel and website, is putting on March 25th. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the Future Games Show, specifically, Team 17, who's big in the indie space. What are your thoughts about all this coming up?
Sure. So I'm really excited. There's been a ton of digital conferences coming out this month. I know Whitethorn Digital has one coming up, I think, at the end of this week, on the 19th maybe. But Games Radar is putting on the Future Games Show. Not only indie games, but they have confirmed that Team 17 will be there announcing some new games, showing some new gameplay. I would assume that there will be other indie developers and publishers there, since there have been in the past. But that's something to look forward to. It's always nice to see new trailers, get excited about new games. That will be on March 25th at 5:45 Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure why they started on the quarter of the hour, but
because why not?
9:45 GMT. So if that's your kind of thing, I know it's my type of thing. I'm going to be watching that. So keep your eye open for that on March 25th.
Well, I think with, like you said, a lot of developers, hopefully a lot of indie ones will want to participate because with shows like PAX East and PAX West in the United States that generally draw in a lot, for those that don't know, generally draw in pretty much all indie developers, we just don't exactly know how that's going to go because of the fallout of 2020, 2021. So having a thing like Future Game Show, like Cody said, will hopefully get a lot of these indie games, as well as some bigger ones, in front of eyes that maybe wouldn't have thought of them otherwise. So stay tuned for that at the end of the month. That'll be a cool one. We'll try to cover some of it maybe in April as well.
So I know that you play Spellbreak. I know that several people in my community love Spellbreak and are asking me all the time to come play it. So tell me about Spellbreak's new season that's starting.
Oh, yes. So for anyone that doesn't know what Spellbreak is, it's one of the games that's on the Battle Royale train. I know a lot of people are tired with the Battle Royale genre. I get it. I personally love it. I still play a lot of those, but I fully understand a lot of players just are kind of moving past that. But what Spellbreak is, it is a Battle Royale online set in a magical fantasy world, but it's all about magic-based attacks. So, like, you don't have your traditional guns and melee weapons. It's all about, fire, electricity, poison stuff, and you're combining these different gauntlets to take out players to ultimately be the last one standing. So it's not new in the sense of the gameplay, but it's new in terms of the aesthetic of it, the magic-based. So I only recently fell in love with it. The developer is called Proletariat. I think they're based in, the eastern United States. Again, like Mediatonic with Fall Guys, they communicate a lot with their community. And they're just wrapping up in March their first, what they call chapters. So it's like the battle pass, your skins, your seasons, all that stuff we've seen. I get people don't always like that. But for me, they weave a ton of storytelling into the challenges, into the battle pass and stuff, which for an indie experience, they do a great job of differentiating what their gameplay is. So just something to keep in mind there. Chapter 2 for Spellbreak, which is a free-to-play game, is coming at the end of March, and they promise a bunch of story beats, a bunch more gauntlets to use for magic, and just moving that story forward in the world. So I'm excited. I was hoping, since Cody said some of his community is, some of you would like to know it's coming at the end of March. So keep an eye out for that.
It still blows my mind that Spellbreak is indie, because I've seen it played, and I don't know that I can really tell the difference just from watching the gameplay. Again, I don't know what the gameplay experience is because I haven't opened it up for myself. But just from looking at it from the outside, I would not think that this is either a low budget or a small team. It just looks like a lot of fun. And the stuff that you mentioned, including the story and the battle pass, that's something that big developers have trouble doing.
No, you're absolutely right. So to have a smaller team, I don't know how big their team is, but I think it is maybe less than 12, less than 10. So to make a game like that, you're right, it's been in development for a long time. People have been playing it way since the alpha days. So it's been around for a while, but it's now getting some light because of some success. But Cody, do you think you'll try it on your channel since some of your community has asked, or is that not your cup of tea? Or cup of coffee?
I may try it someday. My teammates would need to hard carry me, and we've talked about that, but they're still trying to convince me. So maybe one day we'll get there.
Well, so I think with March, we're going through March smoothly now. There's always something you and I talk about a lot, and with our community, is changes to release dates, especially, again, post 2020, all the pandemic stuff. Things have changed, which we're all used to. Why don't you tell us about, I think there was a game that you specifically were excited about in March, right? That has now been pushed. Is that right?
So the top game that I was looking forward to this month, Minute of Violence, it was number 1 on my March countdown, was unfortunately delayed, I guess 3 weeks prior to its launch. At the very beginning of March, they announced that it was going to be delayed. Not indefinitely. It's supposed to be a short-term delay, but they haven't announced a new release date yet. So I think that's one that a lot of you guys were looking forward to as well. It's a really pretty side-scroller adventure game. Unfortunately, it is delayed, but hopefully we'll hear something soon. And I know, Geoffrey, there's one on your end as well.
Yeah, Minute of Violence, to go on that, does look like a really interesting game. I didn't know about it as much until I saw Cody's video. Do you think that's one that when it does eventually come out, we'll try to do a review and cover?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was in my top 10 games of 2021, like the whole year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking it out whenever it comes. And sometimes it's better if it is delayed. If it's going to launch with major problems, I would much rather wait another month, another 6 months even, to play a complete game that comes out ready to play.
I think we all learned from there was a game, I think, a little game that came out in December, a little hyped game, something sci-fi-ish, cyberpunk-ish maybe even, that didn't learn that lesson. So let's hope that Minute of Islands will come out learning that lesson. But
Absolutely.
No, but delays are always they suck when you're excited, right? You're excited for a game, you just want to play it. But when you think about it, like waiting that extra few weeks or few months, hopefully that gives it time to polish and make it the best experience that you've been waiting for. So
yes.
The one that I was telling you about is a little platforming game, very reminiscent of the old Donkey Kong Country games. It's called Stitchy in Tukey Trouble. It sounds like a different language. I don't know. But it's this like really adorable, colorful 2D platformer, 2.5D platformer, where again you control this little character Stitchy, who looks like a little scarecrow, but it's essentially just going through classic, left to right stages like you would see in Donkey Kong Country in those older games, or the more recent Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I had never heard of this, and it looked like one of those perfect platforming games that I would enjoy on my channel that a lot of my community kind of knows about. It was supposed to come March 11th. It was on the eShop listed as March 11th, and then it all of a sudden kind of went away. So I had a chance, was very fortunate to talk to the developer, and they said that they just had to push the release date back to an unknown time due to just some issues with Nintendo and hammering out a date. So it wasn't my list for March. I'm sorry. That was obviously incorrect because now it's changed, but they don't have an exact release date. But if you like platforming games, especially 2.5D colorful ones, Stitchy and Tukey Trouble should be coming the next couple months, and I'll be sure to cover that as well.
So how should we transition here?
How about you put it up and I just read it really awkwardly? Okay.
Go.
Okay, so now I was told, hang on. Now is our favorite games of March? Oh, February. Our favorite games of February. Anyway, we're talking about our favorite games of last month, February. Cody, what were your favorites? What was one of your favorites?
One of my favorites was Rogue Heroes Ruins of Tassos. I'm going to say it Tassos. Sure. I had a really good time playing it with another indie game content creator, Vegathron. We got together in order to review it and play some co-op together. And it's just a really nice roguelite with some nice kind of dungeon crawling aspects, but the town building is what really set it apart for me. So when you come back from the dungeons, you have all this loot to spend, and you can spend it on upgrading this decrepit old town. And as you build more and more buildings, the town actually starts to come to life again, and it's a really just pretty atmosphere. It's really calm in the town as opposed to the dark and dangerous dungeons. But I really enjoyed that aspect of the gameplay. The combat was also fun, but for me what stood out was the kind of town development and building.
That was such a unique aspect, and watching your content on Rogue Heroes was really fun because you really helped put a good light on what that game is. And a lot of people weren't talking about it, or I didn't see a lot of people talking about it before. No. Like indie channels were talking about it, which is weird for a game like that. Did you see in your comment section or from any of your communities, because I saw this, everyone was basically, I should say everyone, I'm sorry, a lot of people were like, Zelda clone, Legend of Zelda clone. And while that's true as far as the dungeon crawling, it's still a roguelite, it's still a town builder, which none of that's in Zelda. So I'm just curious your thoughts on, did you hear any of that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I was actually one that said that, not in terms of gameplay, but I said if you look at this game and you don't see Zelda inspiration, you need to have your eyes checked because it looks very Zelda-esque. Just the way the landscapes are built. In some ways, the ways the dungeons are built, but I think they're a bit different too. But the gameplay is far different with the roguelite elements that you mentioned. The different classes that you can choose are also really cool. We tried a bunch of different ones and kind of found one that was a bit overpowered that we thought. But I know you played it too. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of those vibes of Zelda. Obviously, the gameplay has tiny bits of it, but for me, there's that addicting component Maybe addicting is not the best word to use. It has that enticing component. There, that's better. Of that town builder, because a lot of roguelites, I personally feel, can be so punishing to the point where you don't always feel like you're getting anywhere. Dead Cells was a good example of getting some progression, but it wasn't until Rogue Heroes that it really started to click, coming back and like getting yourself upgraded. And Rogue Heroes, you always felt like you could either build a new part of your town or you could upgrade your health, and all these little tangible things. Even if you died within the first few rooms, you were mostly still able to do something. And I think that hook is kind of where for me at least, it made me realize how roguelites can be so enticing.
Absolutely. And so, kind of transitioning to one of your favorite games of February, another town builder of sorts.
Do you remember, Cody? What is it called?
Little.
I don't know why I asked that so condescending. What is it called, Cody?
What is it called, Cody?
I thought you were prepared. Littlewood. Littlewood, right? Is that what it was?
That is that's what I was referring to.
Oh, you're talking about Fortnite. Yes, Fortnite is. Sorry, I had to say it. Anyway, yes, Littlewood. So for those of you who don't know, Littlewood is an adorable, charming, like Cody said, town builder, life sim. On the surface, it looks very much like a Stardew Valley or an Animal Crossing, obviously with a different aesthetic. But Littlewood, what surprised me, was made by one guy, similar to how Stardew Valley was. Sean Young, who made this game Littlewood. It came out on PC, on Steam, and had some success from what I found out. You know, Cody can touch more on that, but wasn't getting a lot of traction for people loving those types of Stardew Valley-esque games. But essentially, Littlewood takes a different approach where you're actually the hero, but you've just come back from taking out the Dark Wizard, you finished all that shenanigans, and now you're just trying to rebuild your life, rebuild your town, and along the way, you know, you're making friends, you're getting crafting components, you're fishing, you're building up your town. None of that is so different from, again, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, but what it does is it streamlines everything. So in a lot of these other games, you have to you have to build your axe, right? Then you have to build your hammer. Then you have to build a piece of wood to build a piece of a house. But like here, the game just streamlines it so you can walk up to a tree and just start hammering away or axing away. You can start axing a tree. It doesn't matter. You can hit a tree with an axe, and it essentially, the game just knows what you're going to do, and you don't have to worry about fiddling with inventory. So things like that, it's just a very charming, simplified version of those other, I don't want to say bigger, but those other more well-known indie type games. So if you like that farm life building sim, Littlewood is a great game. It's not out everywhere yet. It's out in North America and I think like Brazil, and it is coming to the UK, the EU, other parts of the world in the next coming months. But Cody, what do you know about Littlewood? Have you played any yet? Have you heard about much of it?
I haven't played it. What's interesting to me is, like you mentioned, that just the streamlinedness of it, how streamlined it is.
That's a word.
Yeah, that you don't have to spend all this time going through this like specific crafting tree, item by item by item, but you can spend more time enjoying the game for what it is and building your community, building relationships within the community, and I think that's really cool.
So yeah, keep an eye on those games that we chat about in February if those sound interesting. But I think more important, what people are excited about is going to be this month, March 2021, and we each have a couple of games we wanted to quickly put on your radars. Cody, why don't you go ahead with what your first one was today? Yeah,
so for me, a game that I already previewed on my channel is Narita Boy. A techno-looking, kind of 80s inspired platformer, a 2D platformer, but gorgeous colors, a really neat story, kind of a dual story actually, kind of two layers to it that I really enjoyed way more than I thought I would. It's a little slow up front, there's a lot of text and kind of introduction to the game, but once you get past that, the game really opens up and is just... It's just a beauty. I don't want to say too much because the story is really where it's at. But definitely keep an eye out for that one. I think it comes out March 25th or 30th. It's at the end of the month.
It looks like a cool one. I hadn't heard about that until I saw a trailer and then your preview. So make sure to check out Cody's preview at Indie Game Pulse. It does a great job of explaining what the game is and why you should be excited. But it very much has that 80s kind of retro vibe, but you can tell the gameplay is highly polished. So I appreciate you putting that one on my radar. I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, and one that you're looking forward to, and I'm also looking forward to as a big board game fan, you're looking forward to Arkham Horror Mother's Embrace.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm going to have a hard time explaining this because even after reading about it a lot and talking with the developer in hopes to get a review copy of it, I don't quite fully understand the game. So maybe you will more, Cody, since you play board games where I don't as much.
I've played Arkham Horror. I kind of feel like a passenger when I play it. There is so much going on, but very Cthulhu kind of vibes. Very, horror, creepy. I really enjoy the board game. I think you'll really enjoy the video game of it.
From what I've gathered, again, please take this with a grain of salt because it's hard to understand unless you've played or really are in the lore. But if you like H.P. Lovecraft, you like Cthulhu-inspired mysteries, the game is supposed to have a nice horror-tinged story, investigative aspects, tactical aspects, and puzzle aspects. So it sounds like there's a lot going into it. I'm a little bit worried that it might be too many gameplay elements. But if you like, again, that H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu-inspired stuff, or if you're a fan of like those Sherlock Holmes games, again, I haven't played it yet, but it just looks like it has those vibes for a nice creepy night in to play, especially if you're a fan of the board game like Cody is. So that comes out, I believe, March 23rd or 24th. So keep an eye on that one. But Cody, there's a big one that I've heard about a lot, but I don't know much about. So that's Disco Elysium, the final cut. Why don't you tell us what you know about that coming out?
So Disco Elysium has been out since 2019, I think late 2019 on PC. Now it's coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Google Stadia. They've revamped, they've added a little more to the story, a couple more quests, and they've fully voice acted the entire game, which is a huge thing for me. I love feeling immersed in a story. I love feeling like the characters are their own characters, like I don't have to mentally voice them. I love it. Thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people have played this already, and several have touted it as the best story game in indie games. I know I'm really looking forward to checking it out. I love RPGs. This is like a kind of a dirty detective with some supernatural elements to it, I believe. Man, the game looks incredible, and now hopefully it sounds incredible too.
Yeah, it's been talked about a lot, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up because a lot of people are probably excited on consoles. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like I've heard a lot of people compare Disco Elysium, or at least the version that's been out, to like the classic days of Obsidian, the Obsidian developer RPGs, like these really in-depth, heady, meaty games to just dive into. Is that true? Have you heard that as well?
From what I've seen, I can definitely see the comparison. There's a lot to uncover. There's a lot of customization in your character, different character builds, different stats and stuff to customize. So I think it's one of those games that you could definitely play more than once and have a completely different experience. And to me, that's a big deal. I like to have that option to go back in and have a completely new experience in the same world.
Well, that's going to be fun. I hope people get to try it out. I'm excited to see more coverage on it from your channel, and maybe I'll try to do the same. We'll see.
Yeah. So the other one on your list, I have no idea what it is, but I am very intrigued by the name Stubbs the Zombie.
Well, I hope you get to try it out. So it's called Stubbs the Zombie Rebel Without a Pulse. It's a very long name. So essentially, I'm going to be honest, this is kind of a borderline indie AA game. It's made by, let me first say, this is actually a remake or an updated version of the original 2005 Xbox game. So this game originally came out 16 years ago, which is mind-blowing, on Xbox, and called Stubbs the Zombie Rebel Without a Pulse. Essentially, it's a sort of open world, B-movie take on the whole zombie thing, where your character Stubbs can take off his head, take off his arms, throw them at enemies, and it's essentially like an action brawler, platformer, 3D adventure. But it had a lot of humor, a lot of charm, and it had that sci-fi horror B-movie vibe. It's schlocky, but it's also a little bit scary, and it was very much a product of its time, that action adventure. You just run around, you attack things, you find collectibles, you can recruit other types of zombies to go attack all the humans. So it's very much a tongue-in-cheek type of game. And the fact that after 16 years it's coming back, it's not a full remake or remaster, whatever the word is, where it's like from the ground up, everything's all done. It's more like an HD version. So don't expect it to be in all its beautiful glory. But if you play the original 2005 one like I did, or even if you haven't and you like zombies, it's supposed to just be a fun romp. But again, it's not necessarily indie, but it's kind of that borderline. But I wanted to include it because it's a really fun game.
Geoffrey does a lot of kind of maybe not horror specific, but definitely creepy and macabre type games on his channel. If you're into that stuff, definitely check him out. But another game that you played and enjoyed a lot recently was Pumpkin Jack. Do you feel like this is in the same vein as Pumpkin Jack, just kind of creepy and also kind of light and silly at the same time?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, for those that don't know, Pumpkin Jack was my favorite indie game of 2020 because it does, like Cody said, it has that kind of creepy, macabre, but also like whimsical and silly vibe. Oh, that's a good question. I feel like it's not going to be the same in terms of gameplay because this is more like a kind of open world. You recruit zombies. There's some strategic elements, whereas Pumpkin Jack was mostly like a linear, just kind of Halloween vibe game. Yeah. But I think in terms of that, like horror infused with humor, the B movie infused with like, charm. Like there's a nice mix where I think it'll appeal to certain people that like that more off the wall as opposed to like straight out horror.
Yeah,
that was a good question.
I mean, that's the kind of horror game that I think I could enjoy. I'm not into jump scares and, dark hallways with your flashlight, but that kind of lighthearted, but also dark at the same time. That's the kind of, like the Nightmare Before Christmas, I suppose.
So do you think will you give this game a try? Do you think, knowing that it's a little bit more lighthearted, does it sound interesting to you or not? Is that not up your alley?
It does sound interesting. I mean, Pumpkin Jack sounded really interesting to me too. It's just a matter of time. Unfortunately.
Yes. Well, so I think those are just a few games that each of us were really we've talked about as friends and we've talked about as channels and just wanted to kind of put on your radar, right, to just get you excited about. But I think something that we were both really excited to share this month with you guys was we do a lot of conversations with indie developers. Whether that's for a review, whether that's just to learn about a game. Cody is one of the best people for talking with these indie devs, and we thought it'd be fun to highlight our favorite independent developer or team of what am I trying to say? Of March. I forgot the month. So, Cody, why don't you start us off? Because this is a fun way for people to learn about these people that make these games. So, who was your favorite indie dev of the month for March?
So, mine isn't one that I've been in direct contact with this month, but it is Mojiken from Indonesia. They're a very small team making beautiful story-based games. A game that I love to talk about, probably my favorite game of last year, is When the Past Was Around. It's about a 2-hour point-and-click adventure, or story rather, but the art is just beautiful, the story is touching, and the music is unforgettable. But recently, they were at the Valencia Indie Awards, and they won four different awards. 3 for When the Past Was Around. They won Best PC Game, Best Narrative, and Best Music and Sound, which is obvious. I mean, the soundtrack is incredible. But another game that they have coming up this year, A Space for the Unbound, also won Best Game in Development. And that is set in 90s rural Indonesia about, I think, a child struggling with anxiety and depression and also dealing with supernatural powers. So I think, anxiety and depression is something that a lot of us can relate to and probably have dealt with in some form or another in our lives. And I'm really looking forward to playing A Space for the Unbound later this year. But Mojiken is one of my favorite developers ever, not just this month. They make incredible stories. So I just wanted to share the love with them.
Well, I'm so glad you did, Cody, because when you talked to me about them prior to doing this, you could just tell from the way you described it, like you did now, how much care and passion they put into their projects. Even the fact of tackling heady subjects in a respectful way, in this medium, which is so tangible and hands-on, is really next level storytelling. So I haven't heard of those games until you told me about them. So I hope that I'll get a chance to play them because they sound like really good narrative experiences that maybe could help provide some hope or inspiration. So thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention. And
the developer that you wanted to highlight is one that you've actually already played the game and reviewed and have been in contact with, and that's Talpa Games, correct?
Yeah, it is, Talpa Games. So what's cool is like Cody and I both want to highlight a developer, but for different reasons, which is really neat. So Talpa Games, who's a small team made up of 4 people, I believe, I want to say Spain, I'm sorry if I'm incorrect, Talpa Games, but I'm pretty sure they said Spain. But they made the wonderful 3D platformer Mailmo, which I won't touch on that a lot because there's already been enough content in the channel. But I want to highlight Talpa Games because they are one of the most communicative and caring group of people that made a game, an indie game that I've ever seen. And I say that because from the first time I reached out to them on Twitter to review Mailmo to them actually coming into a stream that I did on my channel for 3 hours, they were there for most of the time. A couple of their developers, and just chatted with the community. They let them ask questions. They were there just providing insight into the game and the development, and they just spent their own personal time that they're not, I mean, they're getting exposure, but they're not making money from this. They're just there because they love their community and games, as well as just talking to people in like the YouTube comments for the reviews and other channels I've talked to. They're just good people that put a lot of love into their game, and you can tell they care about their community. So I just wanted to like let you guys know, Talpa Games, amazing developers, amazing people, they really care. So by buying a game like Mailmo, whether you like 3D platformers or not, shows just that you care about the people making these games. So for that reason, I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that they came to your stream. I wasn't able to be there live, but I did go back and watch it later. And just the way they were interacting, not just with you, but like you said, with the community, and just, you know, they're just there for the conversation and to talk about the game and to talk about indie games in general. And I thought that was a really neat thing that they did, and it definitely shows that, you know, they're also human, that, you know, but they're putting their time out there to just spend time with the people that are partaking of their game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that section of just kind of highlighting a couple developers. We're going to try to do that just to humanize, like Cody said, humanize the aspect. We tend to think about games as these anomalous things that are just made, but these are people putting in their heart and soul in this case, especially indie games. So thanks for letting us share that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate each and every one of you watching. Cody and I have had a blast making this, and our goal, in hopes that you guys enjoy this each and every month, is we would like to do this video at the first week of the month every month, as a way to just stay in touch with you all and keep you up to date on a lot of the news and games that are fun, and just to create better connections and friendships. So that's kind of our goal. So look forward to another one of these type videos or content, which Cody will touch on in a second, at the first week of April and going forward. Cody, take it away.
Yeah, so a question for you guys. Would you like to see this type of video in a live stream format? Maybe just an hour or so of Geoffrey and I catching up together about indie games that we're looking forward to, just the same stuff that we talked about today, and also being able to engage with you guys and hear what you're looking forward to as well. And then in the same vein, leave us some questions down below that you'd like to see answered in the next video, kind of in an Ask Me Anything type format, and we will do our best to answer those. And if we do a live stream, we could even have kind of a live, you know, just 5-minute section of you guys asking us questions and us answering. It doesn't have to be anything indie game related. Obviously, we love talking about indie games, but, you know, if you have personal questions about us, you know, not too personal, but you know, things you're curious about. What's our favorite food? You know, stuff like that. Feel free to leave those down below. If you want to see it in a live format, also leave that down below. And we look forward to hearing from you guys.
Cody, I think one of the questions we're going to get, so we don't have to get it now, what band do you have on your shirt? Because we're both wearing band shirts and we talked about this, so I feel like we should address this now so we don't get only that question. Cody, who has that?
It is Yellow Card, RIP 2017. Probably my favorite band of all time. What about you, Geoffrey?
And we didn't plan this, by the way. This just happened to be we both wore black shirts with bands, so this wasn't planned. I'm wearing As I Lay Dying, Shadows Are Security from 2005, my favorite band, and what got me into metal. So don't ask that question because we just told you.
You know
but
it.
If you want to ask it, we still love you. All right, guys. Cody, where can they find you if they want to check out more of your content?
You guys can find me on Twitter, Discord, Facebook Gaming, obviously YouTube. If you're not subbed already on YouTube, what are you doing? And Geoffrey, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I am the Indie Gaming Guild on YouTube, or Indie Game Guild on Twitter. So check out over there if you want more indie game content. And Cody and I are really excited to be able to bring more of this content to you. But thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts for taking the time to be here. We wouldn't be doing this without our wonderful community. So thank you, Cody, as well. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Geoffrey. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time.